Hey everyone, Keenan Crow here, Director of Policy and Advocacy at One Iowa Action, coming to you with an update about the second funnel. So you'll remember from our discussion after the first funnel that funnel dates are a way to winnow down the amount of legislation that is available for debate at any given time during the legislative session. The first funnel required a bill to be through its initial committee, so either a House or a Senate committee. The second funnel actually requires it to be through both committees, both Senate and House. And so if it hasn't advanced that far at this point, it is no longer eligible for debate as a standalone piece of legislation. We've also discussed before that some of those ideas can be tacked on to eligible legislation as amendments or put into budget bills, which are already funnel-proof, etc. So the session definitely isn't over, but I wanted to bring you a few updates from what we saw recently. Number one, and probably the biggest disappointment for me personally, is that HF 310, the ban on gay and transgender panic defenses, unfortunately did not clear the second funnel. Now, because it cleared the House in a floor vote, that means we won't have to focus on the House next year. We can just focus on the Senate, and that's exactly what we'll be doing. We'll be working very hard with the Senate over the interim period to try to make sure that this gets to the governor's desk next year. It is a bipartisan piece of legislation. No one was registered against it whatsoever. I have not yet heard an argument as to why it isn't needed. In fact, Representative Kaufman said in his floor speech very explicitly that it is needed and that people should not be discriminated against in that way. So I can't imagine that anybody on either side of the aisle actually thinks these defenses should exist, and we will be moving forward with that assumption. A few other things that happened. Number one, a lot of the abortion bills have gone away, except for the constitutional amendment. And that is something obviously we are registered against. That changes Iowans' fundamental rights at a constitutional level. And so we have signed on against that abortion amendment, which will be debated in the Senate today, unfortunately. So if you want to see Iowans' constitutional rights protected, please contact your senator. Let them know that you don't want that abortion ban constitutional amendment. A few things that are still alive that we're still very concerned about. Number one, HF 802. So this is a ban on diversity and inclusion trainings at all levels of government if it contains any of those 10 divisive concepts listed in the legislation. Some of those concepts include language that seems to prevent training on issues of systemic racism and implicit bias. That legislation, of course, largely mirrors the Trump administration executive order, EO 13950, that was struck down by the courts as unconstitutionally vague. We think that it's a bad piece of legislation, and it has unfortunately only gotten worse. It used to only apply to universities and public schools, and it had an exemption for curricula. The exemption for curricula has now been taken out, and it also has expanded to apply to all levels of government, both state and local. So it's much more expansive than it used to be. We need you to take action on HF 802, and there will be a link both in the Facebook description of this and in the email and the YouTube video. So however you're seeing this video, there should be a link for you to take action on HF 802 right now. The other thing that we're really concerned about is SF 476, the so-called Back the Blue bill, which prioritizes liability protections for employees of the state over the constitutional rights of average citizens. This, again, has expanded and has continued to expand with all sorts of bad ideas. The stuff about laser pointers is now in there. The piece of legislation that would punish local governments if they decrease police budgets is in there. The piece about hitting protesters with vehicles and not having any liability is in there. So there are all sorts of bad ideas. It is a massive bill, and it just keeps accumulating more and more bad ideas as it goes along. So we will be watching to see if that hits the debate calendar. That will be debated over in the House because it has already cleared the Senate in some form. So we will get an action alert together and let you know when you can take action on SF 476. Aside from that, a lot of the other legislation that we had talked about before was killed off by the first funnel, and so not a whole lot of changes outside of that. The three things that we really need to focus on right now are the abortion constitutional amendment, and then HF 802 and SF 476. So we will be back with you with a end of legislative update, as well as always. If you have any questions during that time period between, please shoot me an email. That's Keenan at oneiowa.org, KEENAN at oneiowa.org. And you can ask any questions you want, inquire about any legislation that, may have not advanced through the funnel. We're happy to have those conversations. So we'll see you then. Make sure you're signed up for action alerts so you get that update, and have a great rest of your week.